Good morning, Grace.
Hi, good morning, Shankar. Welcome to Alternative Voices, the first of Substation's online series. Okay, I am Grace Kalaiselvi, one of the associate artists with Substation for this year till next year, Sep. Basically, this Alternative Voices is to give a voice to people who work with community who are marginalized or alternative, or socially irrelevant. So I believe we kind of fit in this category, and we are kicking off this entire Alternative Voices series. So it's a very casual conversation that we're going to have, and would definitely want to introduce Shankar to everyone. Shankar is a theatre director from India. He lives and works from Shine Day Theatre, a theatre dwelling he built in the mountain valley of Attapadi, Kerala, which is really unique. We'll talk more about it in a while. And his works actually include like Criminal Tribes Act, Ibsen's When We Date Awaken, Shogo Ota's Water Station, and Indica for Munich Books Theatre. Okay, Shankar, quickly coming to you. So why don't we start off this conversation by talking about what it means, what is home for the arts for you?
I'll just, it has changed. Meaning has changed. What it means for home for the arts over the
Mhm.
time. When I started in late 2007, early 2007 to late 2007 to work as an independent artist, I was based in Delhi. So that's
Right.
where, from where I created and produced my first work. So it was basically I had a couple of colleagues, and we thought we have to put up some create a production, and then the logistics of it started to sort of really stare at us, like there is no space available in Delhi. So we ended up in a warehouse which was completely covered with glass, and it was sometime in May, in the month of May, and there was no ventilation or air conditioning. So and the piece was very sort of physical demanding. So and the actors had to wear three-piece suits and like trench coats in this in this condition, so they would squeeze out like buckets of sweat out of it. So very dusty, with cement powder all around, and it's a large warehouse. You can't utter a word. You hear an echo for like another 2 minutes after this. So we created, then that was our home for the our arts. And
Okay.
it was a warehouse space, and very hostile kind of space. That is where we created our first piece, and then we shifted. We found that working in this Delhi was impossible, because we just couldn't even break even with our budgets and stuff. There's a lot of time that it takes to commute, a lot of time to organize things, to coordinate. So then I felt like maybe it's a better idea to come to Kerala to continue my activity. So that is then early 2008, I came to Kerala and started rehearsing in Thrissur. I settled down in Thrissur, in a town called Thrissur, which is like a cultural capital of Kerala, just because it has got all these governmental institutions, and also there is one rehearsal space which we can access. We had access to. So then we came to this Thrissur, and that became the home for our work. And it was very difficult, because we had to share the space with other groups. So which meant that we couldn't put up big sets, or like have a light rig for our rehearsals. We always, like, every Saturday we had to take out everything, clear the space for Sunday for some other group to come, and on Monday morning before the actors would come, we'll put everything back. So it was very tedious. uh, it was around that time that I, like, also, like, working without funding, working only with the fire that is there within you. uh, Slowly, it we found it difficult also to survive in towns, Mofusal towns. And that's when I sort of, for very practical reasons, I came to Attapadi, this place. And this is remote, cost of living is much less, land was available for an affordable price. And then that's when this idea of having a home for myself came to me. And So yeah. So that's now I am in Attapadi, and this is where I consider to be this place, my base, my from where I rehearse and work. I also create work with the community here, show my works that I show abroad to the people here. So run open rehearsals with communities, also work with the communities, not just on artistic level, but also very practical level, like drinking water, road access to villages, connecting people. There is a lot of other activities that also started to sort of come along with this my work in the theater. Yeah, I don't
So
think I
this,
have answered your question. I just reflected on what the sense of home and homeless. Basically, I was homeless for a good 15 years. I was homeless, and then like squatting in places, sort of occupying spaces for rehearsals, which all comes with its own challenges and tensions. So for me, these were the two things that I wanted to get rid of. One is the financial liability of rehearsing in a city. One is this kind of free access to space. As and when we want to rehearse, we should be able to work. Yeah,
okay, so this Attapadi, this space, this home that you have at Attapadi itself, right? It's in a mountainous area.
it is. It is. It is not. It is. It is in the Western Mountains,
Right.
which actually it's in the border of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So Coimbatore is the nearest Tamil town, and Palakkad is the nearest Kerala town.
Okay.
It's 2.5 hours from here to the nearest airport, and 2 hours to a railway station.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's in the mountains. Yeah.
Okay. So it's completely isolation from the urban city.
uh, in a way, but slowly I find this getting starting to get connected, because when I came here 10 years before, this was like one of the remotest place I've ever seen.
Right.
But now, like there is a little more of public transport. There are roads coming. There is electrification going on in the region. Like there is also digital access that is new from the last 2 years. Like there is a lot more of mobile phone signals that we can get in this region. So it's slowly getting connected. But 10 years before, it was like almost entirely disconnected, with two two buses from Kerala coming to Attapadi every day. Otherwise, you have to have your private,
Own transport.
conveyance
Yeah.
to get to this place. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. It's quite interesting because um, okay, because even for Substation itself, right, we had a home, now we don't.
Mm,
So it's kind of interesting for me because how do one function without a base itself, lah? Because now the
mm,
online availability is there in itself. Do you
mm.
think that is a possible alternative for theatre?
It is for me. I still haven't figured out a way to uh, convincingly do or appreciate theater that happens online. For me,
Mm-hmm.
the mutual physical presence of the actor and the audience matters the most for theater.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
uh, and also the viewing culture is very different, because in theaters you have this sort of viewer response loop, where the audience also feeds into the creative work, right? So to which the performer responds. So there is this viewer and actor or a performer feedback loop that determines the viewing culture of theater. But in this medium, like I see now, I don't have an audience, so there is
Yep.
no way that I am responding to the temperature of the audience, or so it's more, it feels mechanical for me. I think for theater, especially for this theater, dance, performing arts, I think space and the real is very important. The virtual can function as a quarantine space, but that's that's
It's not a
fleeting.
replacement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can't be a replacement, I don't think. Yeah.
Okay. Just have a quick check. So, how do your actors? Where do you get your actors for your shows?
All over the world. All over the world, I have worked with actors from all across the country, from the local
Wow.
actors here to like performers, from professional actors from Japan or Germany, or like from a wide range actors coming from different backgrounds. Yeah.
So, do they do something like a residency in your space itself to create
Yes.
the work that
So
they want to create?
Yeah, so when we rehearse now, we are all, we stay in one place, all of us, through the entire course of the rehearsal, and we create the work. So we live together. Yeah,
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's really cool.
yeah,
We wish
yeah.
we
So
can do more of those kind of stuff here.
yeah, yeah. Then it's also like there is very less distraction. What one could achieve taking 2 months in a town, you could, try and get to a similar level maybe in 4 weeks time. So,
Oh,
because everybody is like connected together, eating together, living together, talking, rehearsing. So it creates a very different sort of a social atmosphere for creative work, which makes it a
that's
little
true
more,
because
yeah,
yeah,
it makes a
no,
little
no.
more efficient, like the time that we spend, like maybe like, like we'll be just hanging around and sitting, but there is work going on, but that doesn't happen in a city. Like, you can't just be in a city, because city comes with its own sort of agendas, and like
Limitation.
you just have to run, to keep up with the
Because
pace.
I believe in the city is more of a time equals money kind of a thing.
Exactly, exactly. For you to
Yeah,
spend a day in a city, you need money. But in the
yeah.
place like this, of course, you still need money. But it's like it's something like you can still do without. Like, for a few days, like
Mm.
you could live off the land, and and be with the community, and some like the creative space is active.
That's really good. But how is the pandemic for y'all for handling at this moment?
See, for me, the way it has been handled in this country, on an administrative level, has been a mess, because there has been goof ups in every single stage, like from the beginning of the lockdown to the taking of, like, I don't know if you came across those images of people walking 3,000, 4,000 kilometers, because they
Yeah.
suddenly became jobless, and they can't survive in this, in the cities, to where they came looking for work. Suddenly everything closes down, and people just had to leave, like walk, and like, it was one of the biggest sort of human migration that happened, recently, like thousands and
True.
thousands and thousands of people just travel, like their feet, carrying things on their head, with families, like for 3,000 kilometers. It's not a small thing. So that is, and then total isolation is what, like, sort of dawned upon us. And then it took like a year, and around a year for the government to come up with the vaccine. But then still, somehow we were waiting for the auspicious time for the vaccination drive to begin. When it began, also it came with its own sort of administrative, logistical challenges. Like, the cities got the vaccines first. In the village, in the countryside, like, it took much longer for the vaccines to come. Even but recent the last 1 month, it has been good. Like, the vaccination drive has been like really going fast, and everybody is getting vaccinated. Theaters are shut down till now. We haven't had any public performances since March last 2020. So no
Right.
public performances till now, no cinemas. Like, these are all regulated, but if you go out in the market, everything looks very normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a bunch of contradictions, and like, there is this online, in a world that has opened up, but it's still, again, it's a very sort of niche space for people in India, because like, 80 to 85% of the people in Attapadi are not digitally connected. So
Right.
this medium excludes that whole community. Even education, like, suddenly the schools became online, where we have had just like 10 to 15% of students who were able to catch up with the courses, but the rest of them just like, it's games in the mobile phone. And young people, the youth, have lost a year and a half to 2 years now without having to go to
Yep.
school. And now schools are starting from November, but then those who were in the seventh standard, now who are supposed to be in the 10th standard, have lost 2 years, and they have kind of completely disconnected. So when they are going to the 10th standard, they don't even remember what they studied in the seventh. So they are from fifth standard to the
Struggling.
10th standard. It's like a huge leap, and we just have
Yeah.
to see how people cope with this.
Yeah. That's how
Yeah.
it is world over.
Mm,
It's not the best of times to be growing or
mm.
living.
I no no.
But
Deep inside me, I wish, like, why didn't this come when I was in the school? Like, so I would have had. longest vacation of life, which never happened. Like which I always wanted to have. Like yeah,
Okay, but how since you say theaters have been closed since March last year, right? So how has it been to survive as an artist over there?
Oh, we had to find other ways of living because there is no way to generate any income. I started beekeeping, so that is what I thought I can sort of pick up and like think about a second career in life. When if theaters don't open for the next 10 years, what do I do? Because
Yeah.
one waited for like 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. Funds are dried up. 1 year, a year and a half. Now it's going to be 2 years. Like there is no, like actually there is no scope for work in India. There is work that is possible abroad, but then you can't travel. So
Mm.
it's a kind of stalemate, and everyone starts to find other ways to make their ends meet. Yeah. So for me, it's
That's
beekeeping.
true. Beekeeping.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting way. Okay. You work with a lot of people abroad and locally itself. So working with different communities, different people. Um, how is it for you? Is it easy? Is it
Mm, see, that is what I sort of uh, got from TTRP to
mm,
find ways to work with people from other cultures, and
mhm,
that is a kind of that is an education. That is something which I call education, to have the skills and understanding to work with people across cultures. It's not easy, and it's not one template for all. It changes a lot. For example, I find big difference between the world cultures and indigenous cultures. World
right.
cultures are like where all of us come from. Where all these strategies of intercultural work, etc., has been sort of evolved from that realm. The indigenous cultures are very different because they do not have a written script. So that
Mm,
completely changes everything. Like your relationship with language, your relationship with other other cultures. So still, I'm struggling to find a way to work with the indigenous cultures in the absence of the written word. So there is no
right.
text. See, so we can say that there was a playwright called Shakespeare in the 16th century, or Ibsen at that time. Like we can say that, or we had Beckett in this time. But when you don't have the written word, like the faculty of cogitation does not
Okay.
exist, or there is no way to remember or collect knowledge. The only possibility is through oral histories, and
Yep.
but the written word also has done a lot of damage where people from Kerala and Tamil Nadu, or other places, have come to places like Attapadi, like me, and have written down the histories of people here in a language which
Mhm.
is not accessible to them. So
Right.
the creation of history itself is problematic. So these are the challenges. It's not easy working interculturally. It's tough, but it opens up a possibility to find invent something new. Because when you are working with a person from another culture, you have to suspend almost all your judgments and baggages and notions that you hold on to, and enter this space with a blank slate and start that negotiation from beginning, which allows
Mm.
this possibility of finding something new, which is the most rewarding part of this kind of work.
That's so true. So when you are doing work with the indigenous people, are you excavating their stories as well in the creation?
Trying to it works in different ways. Right now I am having this one project called the Digital Encyclopedia of Indigenous Voices, and this is something which I'm doing online. So
Okay.
this in the absence of the written word, uh, and in this new world where the digital technology is possible, makes many things possible. So is it possible to create a repository of songs, memories, stories, oral histories, like also knowledge on farming, beekeeping, like how do these communities hold on to their language? How do they sustain and maintain civilities in a completely different way from how the world cultures hold on to the notion of civilities? Yeah, so yes, trying, but it's also not using their stories as material for my creative work. Rather than that, like how do one find this sort of like in the Venn diagrams that we studied in schools, there are these overlap of two circles, right? So what
Yeah.
are those sort of overlaps that come together, and from there how do we build, like because it's important to establish commonalities, common spaces, common notions. So and sometimes when you work across cultures, there are very little things that are common. So it's more excavating or exploring what is common, and from there finding beginning points. Yeah, I still don't have any clear cut answers. I'm also experimenting, and sometimes it doesn't work. Most of the times it doesn't work.
It doesn't. Yeah. Let me try again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but when it works, you create something very nice and interesting. Yeah.
So could I say it's a very process-driven work culture?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So okay. So if the end goal comes, it comes. If not, it doesn't.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, you must give me one moment, and I like excuse me for one moment. I have to go rush and get a charger. My somehow I had charged my mobile, but now it says 5% left. So let me just plug in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Sure. 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 Okay. So for those who are just tuning in, you're actually listening to Alternative Voices. It's Substation's what do I say? Is their first online series of talks with people from who work with the community. And today our guest is actually Sankar Venkatesh from India. And yeah, he's going to get his charger. He'll be back shortly. But it's kind of beautiful working with nature, that I have to say. Something that we don't have at our end in Singapore that much, because ours is more of a concrete jungle at the moment. Okay, Shankar's
Sorry.
back. Okay,
Yeah.
no worries. Okay, I when I
Sorry.
saw through your when I saw, oh sorry, Shankar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was quite interested to find out more about the elephant project actually,
Hmm.
because one of the
Yeah.
reasons you moved to Attapadi is also to work closely with elephants. It technically seems. Is that right to
Yeah.
say that?
So this was one. Yes. So there was this one theater company from Japan called Kunaoka Theater Company. It was like it's a 20-year-old theater company, quite reputed in Japan, and they Kerala back in 1998. So at that time, I was like really awestruck by their production, and there was this lead actress. Her name is Mikari. So like that, her presence sort of stayed in me. And after many years in 2000, early 2000, 2004, 2005, and I was in Singapore, like there was this huge poster of Mikari in Esplanade Library. So I was
Okay.
like, wow, it's the same actor again. Yeah. And then when I came back to Delhi, the same group had come to perform in Delhi. So they were performing Othello. So I again saw this actress, extraordinary performer. And like it was like then it started like I'm also trying to start working as a director, and I wanted to work with her. Then we got a chance to go to Japan and perform in 2007-8. So surprisingly, this actress had come for the post-production party. So then I
Okay.
proposed her a work, like, shall we work together? Like, when I met her. So then, like, we did not have English or no, nor a translator. So with bits and pieces, like, I director, I work with you, actor, make new work, this kind of language. She she booked a studio, and next day, and she wanted to do a workshop for 2 hours in Japan. So we met up in the workshop, and then it didn't work. Like, we just couldn't communicate, and like the kind of work that I was proposing, she was quite renowned, and she was at this apex of her career at that time. So she refused to uh, do the kind of work that I proposed. So she said no, and that offended me a lot. As a director, with so much desire, you go and ask, "Can we make a work together?" And this is what I have in my mind. And she, looks through the ideas and says, "No, I'm not interested." So then I thought I should propose her a challenge, like, because I still wanted to work with her. So I thought, like, she would only agree to work with me if it is something really challenging for her. So some time, like, I came back to India and like thought, what shall I propose? And then just happened to occur to me about this poem which I studied in my school days. So it's an
Mm-hmm.
elephant who is domesticated, captured from the wild. And we have these temple processions and, like, all these celebrations where the elephants are dressed up and they are brought. So the elephants in captivity, they are not allowed to mate. So especially the male elephants, they are kept in captivity and they can't mate because of the economics behind it. Because a female elephant gets pregnant at 20 months, so the 20 months she can't work. Usually elephants are used for logging, like pulling heavy things. So the cow elephant in her pregnancy can't work for 20 months. So you have to feed an elephant for 20 months. Then you have
Yeah.
an elephant baby. You can't get that baby elephant to work for like 10 years or 10 to 12 years. So it's,
Yeah.
if you own a cow elephant and if she gets pregnant, like, you'll be bankrupt by the time this like this 10-15 years. You can't, like, you just have to feed them and sustain them. So that's why
Yeah.
they're not allowed to mate. And due to this, what happens in the male elephants is they have excess of testosterone in their body. And
Yeah.
every year there is a period of 2 to 3 months where they go amok. They run amok. They get extremely violent. They can break chains, shackles. They kill people. They gore people with their tusks, and, like, they run mad. So they are kept in sanatoriums for these 3 months. And slowly, when their, like, temper is, like, sort of calming down, they are brought back and they are made to work again. So this poem is about one such male elephant who has not fully recovered from his from his, like, this state of mind, who is brought to a temple festival because of his size. Like, he's a very huge elephant. He's one of the tallest elephant in Kerala. So he was brought for this festival, and as the crowd and people and fireworks and the festivities progress, this elephant slips into a hallucination. So for
Mm-hmm.
him, like, he starts to, like, the colorful dress that the people are wearing and people standing in front of him, it appears to be like a valley full of flowers for him. And this fireworks going around, like, for him it feels like this fireflies in the jungle. And there are so many of these parallels, and he slips into this sort of dream of his childhood, where he forgets the actuality of the temple space and he finds himself in the jungle. So it's great, right? For the he's in the jungle, and, like, he's, like, tasting fruits, leaves and grass. And he gets a scent, an enlightening scent, and he goes, to find the source of this scent. And he gets to a river. On the other side of the river, he sees a bunch of cow elephants. So it is the scent from them that has driven him deep into the jungle. So when he saw this, and he who has been deprived of any of this companionship, like, he just runs to them. So when he runs, he feels like, creepers locking him in his leg, or, like, monkeys jumping from his back. He feels all these things. He goes and finds his mate, but in actuality, he's running amok in the temple festival. He's he is like, ripping people apart. And like, so these parallels were very interesting. And yeah, when an elephant becomes uncontrollable, what they do is they come and shoot. So they shot the elephant. So the elephant dies. And yeah, so the poet has a very poignant question where he asks, like, this cry.
Shankar? Okay, I think we could have lost a little bit of connection. Okay, that was the question to be asked. Shankar? Okay. I guess we have to wait for him to get connected back to us. So just to keep the talk alive, okay, the work that I do in Singapore itself is with mainly with the Indian community, more of bringing the Indian theatre to the majority of audiences in Singapore. Okay, he's back.
Hi, sorry,
Okay,
sorry.
no worries, no
Yeah.
worries. Yes,
So
as you were saying,
yeah,
the question.
the question, yeah, did the elephant, when he is shot, he screams, he yells, he cries, and he falls, collapses on the ground. Was his cry heard? His cry was heard echoing in the Western mountains. The mountains are the mother of the elephant, right? So the mother hears the cry, but did the god inside the temple, did he hear this cry? Like the god for whom the elephant has been working all his life. So that is a beautiful question, I thought, like, and so then I proposed this piece to her. So she was like in her late 40s, and a very a small built actress. So I like, I asked her, like, when will you, if what I proposed didn't challenge you enough, I have another challenge. Like, can you play a male elephant, Indian elephant, a tusker? And that's like, oh yes, that is something for me. So that was the beginning of the project. And of course, like, this provocation was strong, and I think, like, exactly the way she sort of shook me from within, I also, with this proposal, sort of shook her. And then she agreed, and like we started working without any funding or support, and uh, we were planning to rehearse in Thrissur. And then there it is. So I have this actress from Japan. I have musicians. I have this group, and we go to rehearsal in the morning, and then we find out that our rehearsal space has been occupied by the government. So we can't rehearse because governmental program has come and they have rescheduled. So that's what they do in this in theaters in Kerala. When you book, they write it in pencil, and only on the day they make it in pen. So if there is any other
Oh,
governmental program coming in, they'll erase the pencil writing and they'll write their program in pen. So these are the kind of factors which will really like disrupt your planning. So then I had no choice. Like, you can't rehearse. You have these two apartments rented in a town, and like, you're just sitting frustrated. So a friend of mine said he has a farmhouse in Attapadi, and like, why don't you, come and rehearse here? So then, yes, like, so we came to Attapadi, and that's the first time I came to Attapadi. And also, there are elephants here. So wild elephants, like, every now and then we have elephants coming, wild elephants, and dangerous. Like 2-3 months before, an elephant came and smashed my car because he wanted to reach to jackfruits, and there was this car in between. So he just pushed the car away and went for the jackfruit. So there are many elephants in this region. When Raka came, like Raka and Chalk, they had come here. So they were on the other side of the river, and I was about to go and pick them up. So when I just went out of the house, there was a tusker, right in front of them, a wild one. So then I called Raka and said, "You have to wait. There's a tusker. He has to leave before I can come out of the house." So so that is the kind of place it is. So it was perfect. Like, I could get a free rehearsal space, accommodations, and plus wild elephants. That's where we came to Attapadi, and we rehearsed and created. But then that was also first time when I saw, when I came to know that in my backyard in Attapadi there are these indigenous cultures who are completely absent from my gaze. So So, I was looking for the interculturalism with Japan and Germany, or somewhere else, like,
Yeah.
but there is this, like, the intercultural possible in my backyard itself, and more difficult than Japan or Germany to work with these communities.
Yeah.
So, and I,
Okay.
like, I had also this question of, like, what does it mean for me to have trained in Singapore in this kind of intercultural, trendy, intercultural, way of working theater? What does it really mean to the people here? Would that training make any sense here? So I took it up as a challenge, and I'm still struggling and finding the possibilities of, understanding the intercultural here.
Totally understand. Okay, but this people that you the okay, what kind of work did you create with the community itself?
There are a number of things. One is a Tamil Madurai Veeran Kooth. It's an archaic, performance which, there are 190 villages here around about.
Yeah.
And many of these villages have their own traditional performance. So these are all Kooth performance. So they have, one village has something called Harishchandran Kooth. The another village has something called Madurai Veeran Kooth. There is another village with a Kooth called Karthavarayan Kooth. So there are these Kooth performances, which I'm sure comes from the Tamil,
Yes.
performance, culture of the, of the past. So, but most of these performances are forgotten, totally forgotten, because ever since these communities were exposed to television and loudspeakers and music, for weddings and celebrations, they don't need the live performers anymore. They'll put up two
Yeah.
speakers and an amplifier and blast Bollywood music. So, and that has been going on for 25 years, and most of these performances are forgotten. So I created a group of elders who recollected, who have some memory of these songs, and with them work to recollect these songs. So that was one. So we performed in places, like, but not as a full Kooth performance, but the songs and the text, the literature, whatever they could remember. It doesn't have any coherence, no beginning, middle, end, nothing. It's like, it's they can sing for 3 days, 3 nights. So, they pick and choose from here. So there is this compilation of songs and, dialogues, but not the full performance. So that is one work. There is another work that I have done with the youngsters here, with nearby. Like, those are that the Kutu was with the elders, but with the youngsters, we are looking at this sort of contemporary performance. Now with this digital encyclopedia of indigenous voices, I'm trying to make a repository of this oral histories and stories and recollections in the vernacular that in the language which these communities speak. So there won't be translation. So I'm getting this same group of youngsters to help me sort of collect, document, videotape, and, collect material with which we'll somehow create this repository. So these are the kind of works that I've been doing. Yeah.
In the community. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting to yeah. Um so what is the future for theatre there? Sha- Can you hear me, Shankar? Shankar? Okay, we lost him a bit and I think he'll come back soon. Okay, I'm this is the first time I'm doing work as an associate artist with the Substation, and I've been asked to do a little bit more on the Indian theatre element in Singapore because that's where my work is actually. I try to bring uh, the Indian theatre aspect to the main audience in Singapore. Okay, I think we might get him quite soon. Hoping for. Yeah, we got him again. The connection is a bit bad. But Shankar, are you back?
I'm back, but I'm also listening to you, Grace, because that's
Yeah,
also
okay.
something that's been going on and on and on for some time now. It'd be great to hear your sort of your working context, your strategies, your stories, like, what is it that you are exploring? I think I'm interested to hear that.
Okay, because for me on my side is basically like after studying at Intercultural Theatre Institute, after graduating from there, the interesting factor for me was there was no jobs for Indians in Singapore a lot in theatre, because most of the stories covered usually it's of the mainstream audience, and therefore it was not easy getting any work. So that's one of the reasons why I created this playwriting group called Brown Voices, to bring about more of the Indian stories out to the main community. And most of my work itself also involves working with women and children mainly. And 90% of the time is all with Indians. So that's how my work is. Uh, Specifically, how would I say it? Topics that you don't really hear from the Indian perspective, I guess. Yeah, Shankar. Okay, we are losing him, going in and out of this conversation. um, yeah, we've lost him again. Okay, no worries. Okay, so my practice has been about how would I define it? It is basically to bring our stories out to the main community. That's what I'm working on at the moment. And works I've created include on mothers, on children. One of my recent work with in Singapore is a mother. It's Amma Sarees, because basically what I love to do is work with our material itself, what we have, and I have this perspective where I don't really like to waste a lot of material. That's one thing. I generally don't like to work with big sets and everything, so I keep everything to a minimal order when I work. So my recent production was usually using all the saris we have, improvising with the saris, making them into material, making them my props and everything, my set, everything. So working in a little bit of an environmentally friendly manner where you don't waste material. That's one thing I'll put it. Because at least in Singapore, I know that we have a lot of most of the Indian women have a lot of saris and they're just sleeping in their wardrobe. So one of the things I always do, like with my mother, I take her saris and then I convert them into puppets and I use them in my production. Um, I Yeah, and in March when I did Amma Saris, it was basically talking about topics that we usually shun and not talk about in theatre, like divorce and how a child grows up in such an environment. What goes through a child's mind. It's kind of interesting because we don't really get that perspective in Singapore itself. Talking about what goes through in the mind of a child and how the working is. Okay, Shankar is back, I see, but is he? Uh, he can be back. Okay, I just got the info that his connection is a little bit off. So yeah, I guess I'll just tell it as how I would tell it as my story lah. Yeah, so I started doing this kind of work where I'm bringing our language and our culture and things about the Indian culture to the mainstream audience. So I focus a lot on wordplay, on how on how I can bring about our stories out to the main. Yeah, wait, I keep getting this. connection that he's back. Is not back. Okay, but he should be back soon.
Grace, it's a very slow. This is also the one of the perils of living in the jungle and the mountain. The internet connectivity is so slow. Sorry about this.
No worries, no worries. I just feel lost when I am just alone by myself. Okay, no worries. So, what do you want to know actually? Let's put it that way.
Uh, it's working in this it's I would from it's my perspective, and I could be wrong. When I came close to the Indian communities in Singapore, there is this thing about they are on. There is a sense of displacement, like rootlessness, like having to leave this mother culture and living in a country like Singapore, which is then now has become part of your life and culture and understanding in the world. uh, and also like when that sense of displacement, and also a very strong sense of connection with tradition and cultures. Like that's also what I found in Indian cultures. I'm sure about it's same for other cultures also. Like
Yep.
many of the people whom I met and whom I knew in Singapore, especially Indians, tend to Singapore Indians, like second, third generation Indians, tend to hold on to the Indianness much more stronger than Indians would hold on to what the Indianness would be. So there is this sense of displacement and also a strong sense of rootedness. So how are you navigating or negotiating this? Like it's just like my curiosity.
Okay, the rootedness, to be very honest, okay, the diaspora itself, right? Because we Indians are displaced everywhere in the world, and I think
Mm,
to each region, uh, the Indianness, what they go through, the problems, the culture they carry with them is different. It's
mm,
completely different, and in Singapore itself is also different.
mm,
And but growing up here, because it's a multiracial society,
mm,
there's a lot of adaptation to do to be along, to get along with everyone else. So the
mm,
focus has always been on realistic base of storytelling in a way. So
mm,
when you talk about rootedness and everything, like what I really like when it comes to Indian productions, right, from India, is they have a very deep culture to the aesthetics, the in art aesthetics in India. Like when you talk about the kutus and everything, right, it's a specific form, a specific thing which we do not have in Singapore.
mm,
We
mm,
don't have that kind of rootedness to a specific cultural element in that sense. The main things you'll find are the
mm,
dance
mm,
elements in Singapore, but not in forms of, in the terms of theatre. And there are very few theatre
mm,
trained Indian artists in Singapore, I would say. So that
mm,
being
mm.
the reason where we work,
I know one,
uh,
two,
to
Sasi and Grace, the two people.
yes, yeah, yeah. So, like I said, there's very few people who are really theatre trained in order for us to bring about, excavate the elements of our roots,
Mm,
um, and bring it forth to the audience. So, it's a challenge here because even the Indian community itself, right, would not understand these roots and perform. They appreciate it, but they do not understand the deep levels of things.
mm,
Yeah, that's one thing I'm seeing, but nonetheless it's
mm,
always an attempt to try and create that, like, because you have to touch base with your roots no matter what, because that's where it all starts, and working with your roots is something that I love doing actually.
yeah, in today's context in India, the very idea of Indianness is political, and whenever this Indianness is being put forward by the ruling government, there are ulterior motives in that, like
Yeah.
in creating this Indian. It's a construct. It's the idea of Indianness itself is a construct. So so here, like progressive artists try to move away from this Indianness. That is and when I see like countries like Singapore, there is also this kind of an attempt to reconnect. And for me, when I saw Thaipusam, I was like really shocked and blown out, because that the whole celebration is so archaic that even in Palani, in the biggest Murugan temple in India, you won't find this mul kavdis and this kind of hooks and all this piercing and today you won't find that. People just carry a small wooden kavadi on their shoulder and go for the sake of the ritual. But when I saw it in Singapore, it was like, wow, there is something which is like not there in India, but something which claims to be more Indian than what India is. So this is a kind of and this procession from this place to the other. I'm sure it's the same in Batu Pahat also in Malaysia. But in India, in
Yeah, it
Palani
is.
temple, you don't see this today.
I don't see that. I think it has
Yeah,
evolved in a certain way in Singapore.
exactly. It
Yeah.
has evolved. It has hold on to a certain archaic sort of notions and practices and sort of, yeah, extraordinary, extraordinary.
Yeah. So when it comes to theatre itself, also is it's evolving in a way because right now, okay, besides me and Sasi, there are other theatre practitioners in recent years who have also done theatre studies in different schools. So it is evolving in a little sense from the usual realism. They're trying different elements. Like in a recent production I watched, also I saw Terukuthu being performed in it. So it's interesting to see elements like this being revived and placed in theatre, but it's quite rare. That's one
Mm,
thing in Singapore's theatre background for the Indian community at least, and especially since it's still a part-time thing and never a full-time thing in Singapore, because in order
mm,
to sustain and survive, uh, with the amount of audience one can get in the Indian side, I not many people want to do it on a full-time per se. They all take it as a hobby or something that you can only do out of having a full-time employment elsewhere. Sustainability
mm,
at the end of the day. I can
mm,
see a passion because I started doing theatre in Singapore from 1998. Uh, at that time, for the first 10 years, I only did theatre in the Tamil language itself,
mhm,
not exploring other languages in English or any other languages. But in that year, I saw lots of people with very good passion, very dedicated, and they were doing this. But it's always on a part-time basis, and no one was taking it as a full-time possibility to create work to the next level.
mm, mm,
Yeah, but
mm,
I guess that's how life is in Singapore in a way, and trying to break the mold for since after ITI, it has not been easy, but it is there.
mm, mm.
Yeah, I think we do have a question, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right? Yeah. Okay, so okay, this question comes for me, I guess. What are some of the challenges you face focusing on brown voices or non-mainstream production? Okay, challenges for me focusing on the brown voices. It is a minority's voice in Singapore, so how much of it needs to be heard, how much of it people want to hear it is one thing, because the focus has always been on the mainstream. And when I put up productions, I did one production quite recently. Is it this year or last year? I think it was last year. It was about the racism in Singapore, focusing on racism, male chauvinism, and things like that. It's interesting because people laughed at certain elements, but only to realize they're actually laughing at themselves. Because the issues highlighted in the production itself is what we go through. Because in recent years, especially with this COVID and everything, a lot of these issues has arisen where people start attacking one another online, verbally, physically, and stuff like that. So it- to me, to bring about that production, it was in a way to actually say people always take it that it is a surface level thing. Racism does not exist. We are not racist, but there's a lot of incidents that happen from young until now that they don't understand, but it's a built-up thing. The small thing builds up as a layer and a layer and a layer, and you can't get it out of your head actually in a way. So this kind of issues, when I brought it out, the non-Indians, when they saw it, they were enjoying it. They were laughing at it, and then suddenly you'll feel the silence in the audience for them to actually reflect. It's us.
Mm,
It's we
mm,
who do it. So
mm,
that aside, in challenges is also getting our audience to come out, because for so long we have developed a kind of audience that are so used to watching theater in a specific way, and to shake them and bring them out of the mold into something different, it can be a big challenge actually.
Mm,
That's one thing I am noticing. uh, yeah. So our audience education has already been crafted in a specific direction lah.
mm.
So I breaking that mold itself, that takes work. But how is it for you, for y'all in India? The audience, is there a specific expectation from them?
It changes from place to place. Like if you go to, for me, when I started working in Delhi, like you see 3-4 productions from New Delhi, and it's all cast in the same mold, and nothing is going to change for the next 20 years. Feeling comes when you watch a production, because there is a kind of a way of doing theater, and that won't change, and that has been like sort of reinforced by like generations and generations of people, like who make work for policy lah. So basically, in countries like India, the government has a cultural policy, like they want to bring forward this kind of Indianness, or like as you see now with this the BJP government in power, you have a lot of Hindu art or yoga, or all these kind of construct of Indianness. You can see it
Mm-hmm.
all around. uh, so it's built in that mold. But if you come to Kerala, and I suppose in places like West Bengal also, from where Raka is, that region, like there is also a kind of another sort of there is a counter to this kind of mainstream aesthetic which has been propagated by the state. And when we say the state gives a lot of funding, like for the Indian government will fund work that reflects the Indianness, Indian identity. And as I said, like something which progressive artists wants to go away from. So uh, yeah, it's different. In Kerala, it is different. There is no specific expectations. We want to break the expectations always, and challenge the audience and challenge ourselves. And yeah, it's always difficult when you come up with something new, because the first response from anyone would be like to question, to circumspect before accept. So it takes a while for the new things to really like click, I think. But that's
So the works you
again.
create, do they click at this moment?
Yeah, it'll see, for me, what I have understood, you can challenge the audience, you can challenge them to to any extent, but then in the end you have to find ways to deliver also. And when that process is full, then there is, I find, people accepting the work. I'm a layman, like layman people, common people who come to the theater, who watch the work, they will accept. But like again, like not everyone coming into the theater is it's coming with a blank, sort of open heart. Like there is always theater viewing in India is always prejudiced. So you go into the theater to watch a play with already preconceived notions of how you must assess it,
Okay,
unless
okay,
there are like
that's good.
sharp critiques, like really trying to contextualize and put things in perspective.
Okay, okay. I think we should be wrapping up soon. Okay, if there are more questions that people have, they can actually FB message Substation, and they will direct it to Shankar or me to actually answer them accordingly. Okay, so Shankar, any last words before we end this session?
So good to have this conversation with you, Grace. I've like actually I missed many of your answers, so maybe I will find you, and like we'll. I hope to continue this conversation with you.
I definitely would love to, because yeah, I think talking to you has actually opened up a bit of perspective for me in a work that I'm currently working on. So yeah, breaking the
You have
audience
a question,
perception.
Grace. You have a
Sorry,
question. You have
I
one
have a
question.
question.
Yeah.
You touched upon a very interesting point. You mentioned theatre audience expectations in Singapore. What are some of those attitudes and expectations you've encountered? Knowing their expectation, does it weigh upon the creation of your work? Okay, to be honest, it is a chicken and egg situation because when you get works commission, you also have a limitation in what you can do in a certain way because uh, the people who commission or fund your projects, they have a specific direction in which your production must go. When that happens, it does affect your creation because what you want to do may not be in line with what they initially want it to be. So that kind of thing I've met in a number of ways where I have to change and correct it according to what is required from the engagers of our project. And that what they have, their regulation is actually also on what their usual audience are and what the usual audience will expect and how we should serve them because at the end of the day they are the people who are paying and coming to watch the theater. So when having this kind of things, it can be a bit difficult, to be honest. Yeah. So like I say, in a current production that I'm working on, these are questions that I have been having, but I think I have to thank Shankar in a way because it's true. People will be there, people will question, and people will expect something. But if you break it, it's a start for a new thing. Yeah. Thanks, Shankar. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming and sharing with us all your work. It's really inspiring what you're doing.
Same. Thank you, Grace. Thank you for sharing your work and thoughts.
All right.
I
Thank
was just
you.
suddenly it flashed upon me this essay of bell hooks.
Mhm.
It's titled "Marginality as a Site of Resistance." I thought there is something in that thinking for us working in this kind of margins or alternate spaces. Margins as a site of resistance, and it's by this American black feminist Bell Hooks.
Right.
Yeah.
Margins in the sites.
Um,
Marginality
um,
in the sites.
Marginality as a site of resistance. So she looks at the margin as a location of resistance.
That's quite interesting. Okay, do check that out. I would definitely.
Yes.
And yeah, thank you so much, Shankar.
Grace. Ciao.
Okay,
Bye.
so do join Substation with the alternative voices next week and for the next consecutive 3 weeks, where we have lined up very interesting talks with other people as well. So see you then. Bye bye.